Just lean in, you'll never be alone. Get out of bed, cause you have friends. We know you'll struggle many times. Just lean in. Hey, Paul, how are you?
It's great to see you, Emily.
It's great to see you. For those of y'all watching, Paul's been a friend of mine. I've known him for, I think it's been going on about 20 years now.
20 years.
Yeah. Like 20 years.
Yeah, the math there. Wow.
Yeah. And Paul is such a good guy, very Christian guy, and went to the church that I had gone to, and that's how we met. He was a pastor. You were a pastor over there, right?
Yeah, I started as a ministry assistant, and as the church grew, my role grew, and eventually I became associate pastor and an elder and preaching there at the village.
That's right.
Yeah.
Paul has just always had such a great heart and a love for people. And I know now he's at a different church. I'm going to different churches now, so I don't get to see him as often, but thankfully on Facebook, I've been watching his story, and he has the most incredible story. And he will tell you, I've been secretly trying to sell and beg him to join our team at Just Lean In. And I still know I know he will at some point, but he's the kind of guy that goes all in. And so he's been very clear with me that if and when, hopefully he ever does, he'll be in a position where he can really lean in to the clients. But in the meantime, he has agreed to start doing some talks for us. And I'm going to ask Paul some questions and let you just answer them. The first thing I would love to know, or for you to tell everybody kind of like how old you were, where you were in your life when you kind of had that sort of, like Oprah says, that aha moment. Like
the aha moment.
Yeah, like, okay, I used to think maybe I should eat less chips, but now, like, really, it's time. And can you take us back? Can you sort of just, I'm not going to really ask you many questions. Can you just take us back to that day? What happened that day? And then would you also share with the viewers, like, your journey, how you lost all the weight, and also like the emotional component, maybe some of the challenges that you had, some of the maybe relapses you might have had. I don't know if you ever dealt with binging. A lot of our viewers do.
Yes.
We have a lot of people that are addicted to sugar. We have a lot of people that are addicted to carbohydrates, and we have a lot of people that have body issues, including myself. So I wonder, if we don't normally have men speak, so from your perspective, if you could share with us. I'm just going to be quiet, and I'm going to actually take my camera off so that the Zoom focuses on you. I want you to share your story, and then when we do play it for our viewers, I'll tell you when, and then if they can comment, maybe you can answer their questions.
Yeah, first of all, what an honor to join you. I want to say how proud I am of you and everybody who's listening. This is it's quite the journey to take on a health transformation journey. I don't like to use the word or phrase weight loss journey anymore, because I realized that maybe I was pretty consumed with the idea of losing weight, but I really didn't understand what it meant to really transform my life and gain health, because there are other indicators besides weight loss of living a healthy life. I didn't think I really understood that or knew that until the summer of 2018. In the summer of 2018, I was really at a bad place in my health. I was 315 pounds. I was, I would say, pretty depressed and stuck in a rut. I think I was at a place mentally where I felt like my best days were behind me. And I was really at a place where I tell folks that sometimes I was thinking more about my funeral than I was thinking about my future. And to be completely vulnerable, and I always appreciate your vulnerability, Emily. That's something that I think is so valuable to folks, that whatever you're going through, you share it. But to be completely vulnerable, when I say I was at a bad place, I had developed diabetic neuropathy and had lost feeling in my hands and feet. At night, I would feel like there were spiders crawling up and down my spine, and I would just lose feeling in my body. So I wasn't resting well at all. If anyone's ever had their foot fall asleep, it's that tingling sensation in your foot, and you just don't feel like standing up because you feel like you're going to fall down. I would feel that way most of the night, even into the day. So I was only sleeping probably 2 or 3 hours a night. It was aggravated by severe sleep apnea. My neuropathy had gotten so bad that I had stopped typing emails at work. I would actually use my phone to use my voice to do emails because my fingers just weren't working the way that they should. Another really vulnerable and kind of embarrassing thing was in my bathroom, in my toilet, because I was so saturated with sugar, my toilet would continually form bacteria, and I could not keep my toilet bowl clean. And my urine was so saturated with sugar that I would get fruit flies that would congregate in my bathroom and in my toilet bowl. And even with all of that, being at such a low place in my health, it really wasn't until one night that I woke up gasping for air. I'm a bachelor. I live alone, never married, no kids. I woke up one night unable to breathe. And if you've ever lost your breath, you know how scary that feeling is. And I was just gasping for air and feeling like I was going to quit breathing. And it scared me enough that when I finally got my breath back, it felt like forever. I knew that I wanted to go to see a doctor. And so the next morning, I scheduled time to go to a care clinic. I saw the doctor. We discussed what was going on. He ran some blood work and some tests. And he immediately called me and he said, right now, your blood sugar is so high, I'm going to need you to go to the ER immediately. So I drove over to the ER, met with the doctor, gave him my results. They put me on some liquids, and the doctor sat me down and he said, Mr. Mathis, I'm looking at your results, and everything that's supposed to be low is high. So your blood sugar, your blood pressure, and things that are supposed to be high are low, such as your testosterone. You have very low testosterone right now. He said also, you're looking at a point in your health where you're at a decision point. And he said, within the next 5 to 10 years, I'm not saying that you're going to lose your life, but the quality of your life is going to deteriorate rapidly. He said, I would bet that if you don't make any changes today, if you don't start making changes now, you're making the choices between you're either going to walk around Walmart or ride the cart around Walmart. And when he said that, I lost it. I started crying. I like to joke around that the first thing I thought was that this man thinks I'm so healthy that no matter what I do, I'm doomed to shop at Walmart the rest of my life, one way or the other. But then I said to him, what should I do? And he said, anything would help, any steps that you take. And he said, I would just challenge you right now to think about your sugar intake by the way of sugary drinks. He said, how many sugary drinks do you think you're consuming? So he started listing them. He said, sodas. And I was like, well, 7 to 10 a day, probably. I mean, I was drinking a lot of sodas. He said, store-bought juices. Yeah, I'm drinking those. Are you drinking any energy drinks or Gatorade? Yes. Are you drinking any sweet tea? Yes. So he started listing all the sugary drinks in my life. He said, I guarantee you, if you just started with that and just started scaling back the sugary drinks, he said, forget weight loss drinks right now, forget diet sodas. He said, I mean, if you just replace those items with water and begin to get proper hydration, if you made that one change, I guarantee you would see significant progress in your life. And he said, if you just started moving in some way, just introduce some sort of movement in your life, it would help you tremendously. So immediately I went home, I opened my refrigerator, and I began pouring out all of my sugary drinks. And I went to my pantry and I took a trash bag and I started putting all of the snacks and trashing everything I had in there. And I told myself, I don't want to ride the cart around Walmart. I want to make a change. And I started doing what he suggested, cutting back and removing sugary drinks. I made two simple changes of ways that I would introduce movement. I started taking the stairs at work instead of taking the elevator. And I started parking at the back of the parking lot, whether it was at the grocery store, at church, or whatever. So it wasn't even making that big of a change. And within 60 days, I lost 30 pounds by just making those small changes. So it wasn't any rocket science. It was really just making those changes and actually sticking with those changes consistently over a period of time that I began to gain more energy and gain more confidence and realize that I didn't have to necessarily revolutionize my world. I just needed to make some simple changes.
Let me ask you this question, Paul. So I'm sure that day one was exciting and thrilling because you
Yes.
were like, this is exciting. I can do this. But tell me
Yeah.
about day 2, 3, and 4. Did you go through some detox?
Yeah. Yeah. So I loved your question about, have there been relapses? Have there been any setbacks? And yes, yes to all the things. Yeah, when you start out on your journey, there is that motivation. Uh, a lot of it sometimes is external, right? It's that, you want to see the change, you get motivated by listening to other people. I had a great mentor say that there's a difference between motivation and inspiration. Motivation comes from the outside, inspiration comes from within, right? It's something that you wake up and you really want to do. So I would say that immediately I dealt with the excitement, but then I started having the withdrawals, the headaches. I would start shaking, like I would start like feeling like a drug, right? Where I would just feel like I needed to have something, I needed to do something, I needed to get sugar in some way. Um, he recommended that I drink unsweet tea as a kind of a way to like at least tell my body that I'm drinking something. So he'd say if you need to drink some unsweet tea to maybe help you, because it might be the caffeine that you're it might be caffeine that your body's actually asking for. He also said to try fruit, like, to give yourself something sweet, like you introduce fruit. So I would try to use some of those hacks. But the hardest part was after the weight started coming off, I started encountering all the emotional and the mental things that I didn't want to deal with. And I realized very quickly that we are holistic people, meaning that we are tied together physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And our health is integrated in these areas. And the reason why some of us are struggling physically is not only because of a lack of exercise and proper diet, it's also because we're believing lies about ourselves. We're also dealing with things emotionally that we want to bury, whether it's unforgiveness or grief or trauma or anger or sadness. And we may also not have peace spiritually. We may not have any sense of who we are, that we have a purpose and that our lives have meaning. And when you're missing those things in your life, or you're trying to bury those things in your life, you very quickly realize that as the weight starts to come off, we really are like an onion. You peel back the layers, and then all of a sudden you start discovering all these areas. So I tell folks that the weight loss actually became the easy part. It was the emotional weight and the mental weight that I was carrying that became the biggest challenges for me through this journey. I started going to the gym and getting involved in martial arts, which was a huge game changer for me. Martial arts was a wonderful form of exercise for me because it's very programmatic and it gives me goals, and it's not something you can conquer in a day, right? I've been attending martial arts now for almost 4 years, and I next year, Lord willing, I'll be able to test for my black belt. So it's really exciting time for me, but it's been an investment, and it's a very programmatic, progressive thing. It's not something you just knock out in a day. And so that's been very good for me in terms of the discipline. But I would get in my car some nights after martial arts or after the gym, and I would just cry. I would just feel the emotional weight that I was carrying that I knew that I was going to have to confront. So yeah, I definitely encountered the difficulty and the walls. You would hit the walls, right? And I've hit those walls several times in my journey, and have had to figure out ways to keep progressing even through hitting those walls.
So one of the things that we talk about at Just Lean In is self-sabotage.
Mm.
So I'll give you an example of like, this happens with me, and I don't know if this is something you can relate to, but I have like a weight goal of 155, and my brain has kind of gotten really used to, not that we should measure weight, but my brain's gotten used to like 165.
Yeah,
And I noticed that when I start heading towards that goal, something subconscious kicks in, like, you don't deserve to be 155.
yeah,
We feel more comfortable at 165. So let's eat a few more cookies and bust that thing back up. And then
yes,
be addicted to the let's start over again the next day. Do you ever
yeah,
I'm sure now that you have gotten to a point, you probably have new goals that you've hit. Or
yeah.
do you ever get sort of set and kind of like in a place where you're like, okay, well, I've lost weight and I'm here, I'm good. Like I don't need to go any further.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was a big changer for me in that moment that might be a little bit different from where I was in the past. I will be honest and say my health was bad enough that I had to stop looking at it as a matter of just, am I going to be, am I going to be fit or unfit? I had to start thinking about life versus death, if I'm honest with you. I had to start thinking about, do I want a quality life, or do I just want to march towards death? Because I was in a really bad place in my health. And so I think some of it for me is that I have to put myself back in a mindset of not being like, just merely how am I looking in the mirror, but like, what sort of life do I want to live for the rest of my life? Because when you get to a certain age, you may not be able to look the same way in your pictures that you used to look, right? That's just going to be a fact of life. But am I going to be able to continue to prove people wrong? And will I be able to continue to defy my age? And will I continue to have the energy and the excellence to be able to serve, to thrive in these other areas of my life? Can I get down on the floor and play with kids? Can I continue to keep up in the workplace? Can I continue to be a good brother and a good son and excel as a human? Like, all of those areas are affected by our unwillingness to take care of our bodies, right? So I think a lot of the roadblocks I've hit are, you're right. Sometimes I'll hit a thing where I'm like, you know what? I'm fit enough. But then I think, yeah, but Paul, any sacrifice you make in this area is probably going to be reflected as a loss and a sacrifice you're making in some other area of your life. I don't want that anymore. I want to be the best possible Paul Mathis that I can be. I'm not going to be a Brad Pitt. I'm not going to be an Emily Phillips. God hasn't asked me to be anybody but myself, right? So I want to be the best possible Paul that I can be. So anytime I start to hit those roadblocks, I start to ask myself, like, what am I sacrificing here? And then it usually helps me reset to the right mindset.
I was going to ask you an interesting question. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's kind of a deep question, so you can walk past it if you want. I've seen photos of you that you'll put
Yeah.
side by side,
Yes.
or the I don't know if the word chunky or
Yeah.
the old Paul, where
Yeah.
you're like, people love to pinch your cheeks and you're just
Yes.
this funny, sweet, lovable big teddy bear, right?
Yes.
And then there's sort of this new Paul. When you look back at that guy, I mean, you're still Paul, but
Yes.
how did life change for you in any negative ways? I'm curious, when you lost the weight, because have you ever seen like an actor, like a comedian, like a John Candy, God bless his soul, or
Yeah. Yes.
or those guys that lose their weight, and then all of a sudden the parts in
Yes.
the films aren't as good.
Yes. Yeah. That is such a great question. I love that you've asked that question. Being fat was part of my identity. I was the funny fat guy in the room. And I was really worried that by losing the weight, I was going to lose part of my identity and people wouldn't like me anymore, because what would my place be? I was the guy that could always diffuse. I mean, even in my sermons, I would make joke about my appearance or my weight. I could use that as a barrier and I could use that to win people over. I could hit myself before anybody else hit me. So I was very concerned that in losing the weight, I might become unlikable and might lose my place among my friends. I also realized that so much of my identity was wrapped around going out and having meals with people. So much of my time was wrapped around like food and going out for food and centering around food. So I was worried about what it might mean for my community and my identity. Uh, I also was worried that I wouldn't like myself, because I've had some weight loss journeys in the past and I started to lose weight and like how I looked in the mirror and I kind of became a jerk. I kind of didn't even like myself. So I had to make a commitment in this journey that I really want to become the type of person that I like myself in this journey, that I like who I'm becoming. And that's why it's so important, going back to what I talked about. The commitment to this is not merely a weight loss journey, it's a total transformation project, right? It's saying that I want to become better in all areas of my life. And lo and behold, I feel like I've retained the best parts of me. I feel like part of the best thing in this journey has been, yeah, I've had some relationships and friends that I've lost. Guess what? I'm better for it. I was in some toxic environments and some relationships that weren't healthy and that weren't helping me get into a better place. Now I feel like I'm better able to love those people because I have boundaries and because I have distance and I have health in myself and in those areas of my life. So, but I've gained new community and people who cheer for me and who want me to be the best version of myself. So everything that I've seen leave has been replaced with kind of upgrades for me. But I think it's because, again, I've done it in measured ways. I've decided that I want this to be a total transformation journey and not merely like a weight loss. So many times they're like, get ready for your summer body. There's nothing wrong with that. I want people to feel good about their summer bodies, but I also want them to feel good about themselves every day of the year, that they feel like they're making progress and becoming, living up to their best potential. And that's what I love about the message that you and your team put out there, right? This is more than just it's not just a before and after picture. There's so much that's not reflected in the before and after picture, right? That needs to
Yes.
change.
Society does not treat overweight people very well. And
No.
really what they do, and I don't know if you ever noticed this, it's not that when you go out in public, it's not that they're outright rude, but a lot of times they look right through you. They almost see it as a weakness. So it's almost like, I'm not going to be rude to you, but I'm just going to look right past you.
Yes.
Do
Yeah.
you ever notice
Oh, yeah.
that?
Can I tell you, I have received so much better experience going out and doing things by living a fit life. Can I say something though? I think this is really important.
Sure.
I think some of it is also the confidence that I've
Yes.
discovered that I'm putting out, right?
Yes.
So maybe I was unnoticeable or easy to overlook because I was overlooking myself,
Yes.
right? So sometimes what you put out there, you receive. I've also learned, though, that I believe I had this mindset that I had a lot of haters in my life and people cheering against me. And know who the number one hater and person who cheered against me was?
You?
Myself. So whenever I judged myself and hated myself, I just assumed that everybody else around me was judging me and hating me too. That's part of why I didn't want to go into an exercise environment, because I just assumed that everyone was going to be laughing at me or treating me like the fat person or overlooking me. Can I tell you the number of people who've come up to me over the years and cheered me on and said, "I'm so proud that you're here. Let me know if I can help you in any way." Yeah, there are jerks in the gym, but guess what? There are jerks everywhere. There's jerks at
Yeah.
work, there's jerks at church, there's jerks in life. They're everywhere. So I was using that as an excuse to, because I was just didn't want to put myself out into anything new. I was just stuck in a place, stuck in a rut. I quit living with a sense of adventure and a sense of imagination. And I had just put myself in a box, and I'd put others in a box. And it really took me kind of blowing that up and opening my heart up. And I was surprised at the number of people who came cheering me on. It's not always who you expect either.
No.
This is the number one thing that I tell people when they're starting on their journey. I have a number of people who will take along a spouse or a best friend or a loved one, and they'll say, we're going to do this journey together. And then that spouse or that loved one or that friend quits going, and then they use that as an excuse, and they say, "See, they quit, and so I'm going to quit too." And one of my friends said, "Don't drag other people along that don't want to come on the bus. They will either get on the bus or get off the bus, but it's not about them." She said, "Find a community of people who are already committed to their health and join them, because then you know that they're going to keep showing up for themselves, whether or not you do. And that's going to motivate you and inspire you versus trying to drag along other people." So what I used to do is I used to say, "Okay, everybody in my life, I'm going to drag you along with me. If you don't come along with me, then we're all quitting together." And I was like, "Nope, I'm going to find a community of people who are already committed, and I'm going to have to open myself up and form new relationships and new friendships." And I'm so glad I did. So glad I did. Because now I can
Yeah.
still love the people in my life without putting unfair expectations on them. But I also have a community of people that are already bought in. And that's what I would say to folks that are listening to this as part of the Just Lean In community, is that you have a group of people now. You have this wonderful, amazing support system of people who are committed. So look to them, look to the people around you who are committed to this. Don't look to uncommitted people to fuel your passion and commitment, because ultimately you're using that as an excuse and you're putting unfair expectations on them because they may not have had that aha moment yet. So maybe you can be the inspiration they need along the way, but in the meantime, find people who are bought in and join with what they're doing.
I could talk to you all day. I secretly am wishing and hoping we could do like a Wednesday night with Paul. My group is going to love you. Just Lean In. I wanted to congratulate you. I know that you won the big Lifetime Fitness Award,
I
and
did.
that I actually cried when I saw that. And maybe on our next talk, I want to talk more about that. But I wanted to close this interview. There's a lot of people right now, Paul, that are watching, that are not part of our group, but they're watching. They are feeling the way that you felt that day when you were crying to the doctor, and and they don't see a way. They really don't. They don't know what to do. They feel like they have eaten so many cookies and they have laid on the couch for so long. They just can't imagine. They can't imagine trying because they're afraid they're going to quit. So why try anyway? What would you say to the person right now that's watching you, that is where you were, that just needs a little bit of encouragement to either move forward with us or somebody that can help them?
I think the biggest thing that I had to realize, that I hope anyone listening realizes, is this journey can start with a small step and still lead to amazing big change. Don't underestimate the power of taking a small step with great love. Because if you're willing to just make small changes and stick with them, And I mean that, the consistency. So often we want to jump to intensity and we say, by next year, I'm going to run a marathon. Next year, I'm going to win Mr. Olympia, or I'm going to win Miss America. Like, we make these huge goals and we think, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to give up my diet. I'm going to make all these unsustainable, unrealistic changes, and I'm going to do them tomorrow. If you just make a small change in, I like to call them my 3 M's: movement, moderation, and mindset. If you would just focus
Oh, I
on
love
making,
that.
yeah, if you just make one small commitment in an area of movement, try to get moving in some way, make a change in your eating in some way, in your moderation, and figure out an area of your life where you're believing something that's not true. If you just make one small change in those 3 areas and you stick with it, I promise you that the smallest step with great love can become the biggest leap of your life. My life has changed not by making huge, amazing, awesome changes all of a sudden, but by introducing and stair stepping and using building blocks. Just focus on being the next best version of yourself. Don't worry about being anybody else. And I promise you, it will make a huge difference in your life.
Paul, thank you so much for today. You've given me chills. You're so good at what you do. And I hope that you will reconsider as I text you every couple of weeks to really join us. because, well, because
Well,
we deserve,
yeah,
we require this type of information. And you have done such great things for yourself and others. There's a huge community here, though, that I know is going to love this interview. And I hope they all see it. And I
thank
love you dearly. I love you dearly. And I thank you. And for anyone that wants to comment or have questions, I'll make sure that Paul is watching when we air this, and I'm sure
you.
he'll respond to you when he can. So
Absolutely. Thank you
thank,
so much. It's
thank
such an
you.
honor. I adore you. And thank you for opening your heart and your life to all of us, because I promise you, I get so much energy and love and inspiration just by watching you in every area of your life, whether it's being a mom or being an owner of a company or your own health journey. So thank you, Emily.
Thank you, Paul. And I'm going to be talking to you real soon.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Bye. Have a
All my
Merry
love.
Christmas.
Take
Bye.
care. Same to you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
When times were hard, we understand that life was tough, but now you have us forever. You're special, yeah, yeah. Just lean in. You'll never be alone. Get out of bed, 'cause you have friends. We know you struggled many times. Just lean in. You'll never be alone. Get out of bed, 'cause you have friends. We know you struggled many times. And with someone you do feel less lonely and desperate. We share our hearts together, yeah, yeah. Just lean in. You'll never be alone. Get out of bed, 'cause you have friends. We know you struggled many times. Just lean in. You'll never be alone. Get out of bed, 'cause you have friends. We know you struggled many times. Just